Welcome to the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and with me is Interim County Manager Larry Werner. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Lloyd.
And we're going to be looking at the Douglas County Commissioners meeting up at Lake Tahoe. And at that meeting, commissioners did hear a presentation on the 7 county manager candidates that the list has been culled down from 71, I guess it was. And so what are the next steps in the selection process now that we have the 7 candidates?
Now that we have the 7, yes. The next step will be trying to get the community involved in the interview process. On August 4th, there's being some panels set up, both external and internal panels, to basically interview the candidates, to try to get a sense of, the pluses and minuses. They won't necessarily be ranking them, but they'll be kind of giving us their impression of what they felt about each one of the candidates. The night of the 4th at the CVI will be a public reception. Starts at 5:30. Everybody's welcome. Come down and meet the candidates. They'll give them a little briefing about who they are, very, very short, but just kind of get an introduction. And so it's a chance to come down and meet them. And then also at that point, people would be provided cards to kind of give us their feedback on their thoughts too. On the 5th, the staff will tour the candidates around the county, starting in Minden-Gardnerville and heading south to Topaz and up through North County, around the lake through Spooners, and then out to South Shore.
That'll take a full day, won't it?
Well, we're going to try to squeeze it in a half a day. And then to have lunch up at South Shore with some of the business folks up in that area.
I see.
They won't be interviews, but at least a chance to meet. And then back down to the valley where they'll actually meet one-on-one with the county commissioners, not as a formal interview, but just kind of a meet and greet, get a sense of who they are, an opportunity to see them. And then the next step will be to actually have formal interviews with the board on August 18th. And by that time, we'll have gathered up all the information cards and try to summarize what folks thought about the different candidates and that sort of thing. So with the idea that on September 4th, I believe it is, at the Valley Board meeting, then the board would recommend a final candidate to go through the process to see if we can negotiate a contract, that sort of thing.
Yeah, when I first heard the timeline, I thought they're never going to do it in that timeline, but they've really kept to the timeline, haven't they?
They have. It's been very dedicated to the timeline, because otherwise it can drag out forever. So Norma Santoya and her staff at the Human Resources Department has been working very hard with the consultant to make sure that we do stick to that timeline. So, to try to get somebody on board as quickly as we can. There's a lot of things happening in the county, and the sooner that they can get their permanent county manager on, the better off we are. So.
Well, we have the Magnificent 7 there.
Yes,
and
we do.
I thought maybe it would be interesting for folks to know who they are and maybe just a little bit about each one.
Sure, and I'll go through the list we have here. And this is in alphabetical order by no order of preference. So the first one is a gentleman named Richard Benson, and he is coming from Mariposa County, California. His background is he'd worked with Kern County in several different positions there. His education, he has a Master's of Business Administration from California State University at Bakersfield and a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the University of Toledo in Ohio. The next candidate is Mary Lou Brown. She is from the city of Grand Island, Nebraska. She's had a varied experience in Englewood, Colorado, Grand Island, Nebraska. Her education is a Master's of Business Administration in Finance from Creighton University in Omaha, and a Bachelor of Arts in Business and French from St. Peter, Minnesota. I cannot pronounce the college, sorry about that.
Okay. The name of the college. Well, I don't think that's totally necessary. We get it.
Curtis Calder is the current city manager for the city of Elko, Nevada. His experience has been with Washoe County. He'd worked some time there and as a consultant, and also for the Airport Authority of Washoe County. And then he was an acting acting manager of human resources in Elko, and then has since about 1998 been the actual 2003 he became the city manager, and prior to that he was the actual human resources director. His education is a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Nevada at Reno, and a Bachelor of Science from UNR, and then professional development certificates from UNR. And then the fourth candidate is Charlie Cassens, and Charlie is from Lake Havasu City, Arizona. He has spent time in Spring Valley, California, Austin, Texas, Lake Havasu, His education, he's a certified public manager from the Arizona State University. Then we have Timothy Hacker, who is from the city of Las Vegas. He has spent time in Mesquite, in Illinois, in Grand Cedar Rapids, Mason City, a varied a career of work history. I can't even talk today. His education is a Master's of Public Administration from Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, Illinois, and a Bachelor of Science from Community and Regional Planning in Iowa State University at Ames, Iowa. Our next candidate is James Nichols. He is the former Assistant City Manager from, I believe, City of Las Vegas, and also the City of Midland, Texas. Maybe he was a former Assistant City Manager for Midland, Texas. He had spent time as the Deputy City Manager in the City of Las Vegas. His education, he's got a Master's of Science in Environmental Engineering, and that's from the University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut. A Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Northeastern University in Boston, and a Public Management Certificate from the University of Nevada. Christine Vilatek is our current Assistant County Manager and Chief Financial Officer here for Douglas County. Her past experience has been with City of South Lake Tahoe, where she was a Finance Director, City of Folsom, where she was Assistant Finance Director and Deputy Treasurer, and then in the Sacramento Regional Transit District and El Dorado Irrigation District. So she has a Master's of Business Administration from the Golden State University in Sacramento and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Golden State University in Sacramento. And I believe that is our 7 candidates.
That is all of them, yes, and I was counting.
So I'm glad we didn't leave anybody out, yes.
No, you wouldn't want to do that. But no, that's an impressive list of candidates, all of who have had interesting backgrounds, probably would all be qualified to be county manager.
I would think so. And usually to reach this point, the experience and the education says, yes, you're qualified. Then it's a matter of what's the fit. Trying to find the person that fits for the community, fits for the board. Has a sense of trying to move forward in the areas that they want to see it move forward in, that sort of thing. So, and that's actually the hardest part. That's
Sure.
really tough. So.
Sure. Well, it'll be very interesting to see it all unfold. So by September, we could be naming a new county manager for Douglas County.
Yes, we could.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I think we've spent a good deal of time on that one. We pretty much covered it. So we'll move on to the rest of the meeting of the 17th. At that meeting, commissioners approved an agreement for the allocation of catalyst funds, and they approved up to $75,000 to New Logic Research for the creation of 30 jobs, and they also approved an agreement for the distribution of the funds. So catalyst funds, where do they come from?
Those are, it's funding that comes from the governor's office. It comes through an organization called GoEd, which is the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and it's to help incentivize communities or businesses to come to our communities. It's based on job creation. They set up a matrix of so many jobs in a certain period of time, and based on that, then there's a certain dollar amount per job created. So that's laid out as a formula within the contracts. And this actually had been negotiated with New Logic some time ago, but it was a matter of figuring out how the process worked. And ultimately, what it boiled down to is that the governor's office has the money. It's provided to the county. The county then enters into the agreement to provide it to the businesses that qualify for the catalyst funds. So that process hadn't quite been worked out when all these things started, and now we've got a process in motion, and now we can enter into these different contracts. One of the things we wanted to make sure of is that there has been a lawsuit filed against using these funds this way, and I don't remember the name of it. I think it's the Nevada Public Policy Institute or something like that. I better be careful on exactly who that is. But what we wanted to do is make sure in the agreement is that if there is any reversal of this program, that the county is not liable for any of these kinds of issues. So we want to make sure that was into the contract and that sort of thing. So right now, the first step was when this was negotiated initially about a year and a half ago with New Logic, the first step was to create 15 jobs within, I believe it was a 12-month period. And they have done that. They've actually created the 15 jobs. They're working on their next target of another 15 jobs. And then ultimately, they were to look at creating 50 jobs over, I believe it was a 36-month period. They're on track to probably do about 60 jobs, and these jobs are probably around the $18 an hour average type of jobs, so they're pretty decent, and that does not count management. That's truly the labor side of things. So it's a good, and then what happens is the money can be used by the company to reimburse themselves for expenses they had in bringing people to the area. It can be housing, it can be travel, it can be the kinds of things that they use to get employees here, and training, that sort of thing. So there's a list of things they can use them for.
I see. So that 75,000 figure is actually spent over a period of time. It's not
That's correct. It's done
all
on,
in lump sum type of thing.
that's correct. It's done on certain periods and by meeting targeted goals for employment. And it's usually a year after that the employees have to have been there for a year, and it looks like they're going to continue on. Then at that point, they can request reimbursement, and the county then would reimburse the funds. We'd get them from the governor's office and reimburse them to the company.
It really is about attracting new businesses and then creating jobs.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Right.
Both of which we need.
Right.
And also attached to that was commissioners approving an agreement for the allocation of catalyst funds to Chris-Tech Interconnects, a company who came here about a year ago.
Yes, and they actually had an agreement that was done prior to sorting out how this all works and revising it. What we did is actually made an amendment to the agreement that included changing the reporting requirements. I think there was like monthly reporting. It changed to semi-annually, the kinds of things that really made sense. And then to put in the same language that held the county not liable for any issues that may occur through any lawsuits or any issues on the money itself. So that was mainly an amendment on their part. Yeah.
Well, it seems like Douglas County has benefited from the catalyst funds. I mean, 2 new businesses, high-tech businesses to pay well and create jobs.
It has, yeah.
Okay, also at that meeting, commissioners awarded a professional services contract to Accent Environmental for Ascent, I should say, environmental for the preparation of the environmental documents for the Tahoe Douglas area plan and amendments to the South Shore area plan, and that was at a cost of $58,000.
Right. It was to go in and to do the area plans, to start to the next stage of the area plans, and then working with TRPA to make sure that we answer some of the questions that were kind of brought up on the first area plan, and to get that kind of sorted out. And I think basically to allow a lot of the program stuff to transfer to the county. So this would kind of clean up a lot of the questions that were on the first plan and moving into the second plan.
I see. And so the environmental documents, I imagine, are quite critical in the both the Tahoe Douglas and the South Shore area plans. I mean that.
Absolutely. That's really the meat of it, to make sure
Yeah.
that what we're doing is appropriate. Yes.
Yeah. Great. Commissioners approved with some changes a resolution revising the residential allocation policy for the Lake Tahoe portion of Douglas County, including requiring the issuance of an allocation to be tied to the building permit application.
That was an interesting conversation, and actually I know from my standpoint, I hadn't really been aware of what the situation was. It looked pretty straightforward until we got into the conversation. But apparently there are allocations issued through TRPA, and there's no mechanism for requiring those to be acted on with a certain period of time, my understanding. So I'm kind of maybe shortcutting through some of the issues here. If they're not acted upon and then they're called back, then they can be transferred to the county to be then issued through the county permitting process, where you have to have an allocation before you can actually get a building permit. And what the purpose was here is to say that, okay, if you're going to get an allocation, then there has to be a time certain by which you convert that to a building permit and you get the building permit issued. If you don't do that, then we're going to take the allocation back, and because there are people waiting to use these, and we don't want them tied up and not being used appropriately. So it was coming up with a resolution and a program by which we could notify people that, yes, we now have allocations available. You have a certain period of time by which you now have to seek your building permit. If you get the building permit plans and that sort of thing, then that allocation gets tied to it. If you miss the dates and stuff, then we hold the allocation back and it goes to the next person in line. And then the person that didn't get it, it would drop to the bottom of the list and kind of start over again. So the idea is to get them into the hands of the people that are ready to use them.
I see. So there is a list that's kept?
Apparently there is, yes.
Wow.
I think
this is a complicated process.
It really is. It really is. And I didn't get a chance to talk to the Community Development Department to the extent I wanted to on the list, but at the meeting it was identified that there have been people on this list since 2007. So it's apparently it's quite an extensive list. So.
Yeah. I mean, really, to do some of these projects really is quite complicated for people, isn't it? I mean, they have to really go through a lot of hoops to...
It is, and one of the concerns I had is that we were trying to sort that out at the meeting, which is not necessarily a good place to sort things out, is that we didn't want people to have to expend a huge amount of money and then find out that no allocations were available.
Yeah.
So we kind of wanted to make the timing work that if people were ready to go, had an allocation, could expend the monies to do the design work, get their permit, and move forward. So it was kind of hashing out that time frame and that process to kind of meet all the needs of both the regulatory agencies and the people doing the building.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, very complicated issue. Also, commissioners approving the Upper Cave Rock Tank Rehabilitation Project. That's budgeted for 2015. And how do they rehabilitate a tank?
This one, actually, we're going to put a liner inside of it. The tank apparently has somewhat deteriorated some, and it's leaking, and now it's time to kind of bring it down, put a liner in it, and then put it back into service. And what I find it kind of interesting, which I didn't realize either, is there's no road to this tank. But apparently it was built way back when, and to get in there to do this, they're probably going to have to do it with helicopters to drop things into place. Yes, so
Wow.
It was kind of interesting, but it's also a complicated project. And I know when the Public Works Department put this out to bid, they did not receive, I think they only received one bid, and it was not responsive in the fact that it was way more than what we had estimated the tank should cost. And so now what we're allowed by state law to actually go down and negotiate with the subcontractors directly and get that to the point where we can actually deal with it. And I think the reason the bid came in so high was for the folks trying to figure out how to get it actually constructed. So we're working through some of those issues now and probably take that on as our own project, but still following the state law on how we do this.
So the project would be what, to take the top off and put a liner in and put it back on?
That's
type
pretty
of
much
thing?
it, yeah, with a few minor details in between, but essentially that's pretty much it.
And there's no actual road going there, so.
Correct.
Yeah, this sounds like it's a rather
Yeah.
complicated, complex project.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
even on flat ground, these are not simple projects, but this one's got a few extra twists to it.
So is this tank out of service then now?
No, it's
Or-
currently in service.
Oh, I see.
And the part of the issues too is to, when it's being taken down to be retrofitted, then how do we make sure we have the fire flows, we have all the
Yeah.
appropriate water and all the pressures that we still need to maintain a viable water system up there. So it does get a little complex.
Okay. One more item from that meeting, Commissioners introducing an ordinance to amend Douglas County Code. This is establishing a speed limit of 15 miles per hour in the Olive Park General Improvement District.
Right, and this one was at the request of the GID, the Oliver Park GID, where the multi-use, multi-pedestrian paths, I guess, say intersect Kale Drive. There needed to be some reduction in speeds there just because of some poor sight distances and the amount of pedestrian traffic and bicycles and that sort of thing. So the GID held the hearings, went through the process, adopted a recommendation and submitted it to the board, which the board then approved, reducing the speed.
Okay. Well, that pretty much takes a look at the meeting of the 17th. We do have another meeting, of course, coming up. That'll be in August 7th. And do you have any preview yet of anything?
We don't. Stuff will be coming in this Friday. We got an extra kind of week in here someplace.
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
And so I have not heard of anything. I do believe that we are not having any of our major water and sewer issues on this one.
Seemed to me they said September that was going to come back.
Correct. I think that's the next one. So this one might be fairly mellow, but we'll see. But I'll know more about it this Friday.
Of course, it'll be after the candidates have come to town.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know, are the commissioners allowed to talk about that much at their meetings, or is it?
Not at this point, because essentially it has to be an agendized item and they have to be able to debate something. So that's why we're having a special meeting on the 18th of August, so they can actually do the interviews in a formal public setting. So
I see.
at this stage, they really won't be able to say much, unless there's a request on and they've got some issue that they really do want to talk about the 7 candidates, and obviously we could agendize it and put it on, but at this stage, there's not anything in the wind that we know about.
Okay, that pretty well takes a look at the commission agendas. Maybe we could go on to a different topic here. We had a real incident happen on last Sunday. the skies opened up and the rain came down and the winds blew, and it was really a tough situation for the folks in Johnson Lane and Fish Springs, and really everybody in the Carson Valley was affected, and the area here. And I know commissioners were following, and yourself as county manager, were following the whole thing very closely. And maybe if you wouldn't mind giving us kind of a recap of what
Sure,
you were seeing,
sure.
and then we can also talk about the fact that the commissioners didn't declare a state of emergency,
Right.
and the reasons for that.
Right, and as most everybody's aware, probably I'm guessing about 2, maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, started to rain, and we started to get some very interesting cloud patterns and rain patterns. What we saw was basically a thunderstorm, thermal storm that centered in on, actually circulated through the valley, and several spots hit, one of them being Fish Springs, the other one being North County, the Johnson Lane, Stephanie Way area, and then it kind of popped over toward Center Drive in that area in Carson City and kind of rotated around. And what we're beginning to see now that it dropped in some areas about 1.3 inches of rain in about 30 minutes, which
That's
is just
incredible.
yes. And it's the kind of storm that wherever it decides to stop and rain, it just stops and rains. And those are the kinds of storms we can't design for. We're used to typical alluvial fan flooding where you get, a typical rainstorm or you get a typical snow melt and it comes down through your drainage systems. These things drop with such intensity that it immediately starts eroding everything around it. It washes out everything it can. It fills the drainage systems. So we were getting calls probably starting about 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And the decision was made to bring the county commissioners together to talk about whether or not we should do an emergency declaration that evening. And so we met at 5 o'clock at the fire station, at East Fork Fire Station, the district office there. And at that point, we had people out assessing the damage in different areas and looking to see what was happening to the public infrastructure, mainly the streets and highways, water systems, power, that sort of thing. And also at the same time looking at individual home damage and what was happening. What we saw was a lot of mess as far as it related to the county's infrastructure, but not a lot of damage. A lot of cleanup, but we didn't see streets actually washed out. We saw some undermining beginning to occur. But by the time we went through the numbers, it did not quantify to be an emergency under both state and federal definition. And it's kind of got a hierarchical process that if there is going to be an emergency declaration, that goes all the way to the federal level, is where we begin to access funds. There has to be certain quantifiable dollar amounts, and then it goes to the state level, and then it has to meet state threshold, and then from the state it goes on to the federal level. And we were not seeing that occur, although people individually, some of them very extensive damage to their homes, there just simply wasn't enough to meet this threshold. And even if we had declared an emergency disaster, or a declaration of emergency, that provides funding for repair for county activities or public infrastructure, and it does sometimes open up doors for private in the form of low interest loans if there's been structural damage, those sorts of things. So if somebody had a garage full of mud and their landscaping gone, none of that qualifies, unfortunately. That's simply in the homeowner's pocket, and we're not saying it's a good thing, it's just the reality of it. And we can't get out to help on private property, our liability doesn't allow it, our insurance doesn't allow it, and it really needs to be handled. What we're doing now is trying to make some ways that people can move their material out to county streets, as long as it's not in the roadway, and as long as it's not mixed with debris, we'll allow them to push it out to the shoulders if they're trying to get rid of mud and rocks and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then we'll come along and pick it up. But what we're finding is some people are mixing in appliances with their mud and other kinds of things that are coming out of their garage, and that creates real problems for us. So we're going to try to create some drop-off points where they can take those materials and drop them off, but yet then push the mud and the stuff out, and we'll help them with that. So I think there's our county engineers kind of going around the area, talking to people that have mud in their homes, that sort of thing, to explain this process. But there's not a lot we could have done regardless. Even if we declared it an emergency, probably would not address, I don't think it would have helped anybody. I think they've all would have been stuck with their own problem.
Well, it is interesting. A lot more goes into declaring a state of emergency than one would think. I mean,
It's
there are
true.
certain guidelines they have to meet.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we could have done. We thought about doing it anyway, and then we just thought, it's just not going to go anywhere. And we
Yeah.
didn't want to give people false hopes that they think that, oh, good, now there's be a lot of federal money. Regardless, it would not have happened that way. So
Now, where we were really fortunate was the fact that lightning was striking all over the place, and we didn't have a major fire situation. We had some small fires, but
that's correct. The last count we had 4 houses that were actually struck by lightning, and it was raining so hard though there was no associated fire. That's usually where you have a problem. I believe there was one. I can't remember whether there was a pump house that got hit, but the local fire, and it did catch fire, and the local fire department got it taken care of. The volunteers took care of it right away, but. Yeah, we were really speculating. We were trying to decide whether this is kind of like a microburst or a mini tornado. I mean, it was really a strange climate phenomenon that hit out there. I don't think any of us have ever seen anything like this in the area
No.
if ever. I don't
no.
know.
Yeah, this was very unusual, and I guess we came out of it pretty good in the final analysis. I mean, all
Just
things
a-
considered.
Yeah, just a lot of mud. We'll get the streets cleaned off pretty fast, and that's happening. And there's going to be some work we're going to do along the big drainage channels, and that all has to occur before we can get up into the little roadside ditches. So we've got months worth of work to do. Particularly when it comes to getting to the local roads and the roadside ditches and the culverts and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of work.
And of course, the golf tournament up at Lake Tahoe was affected too, the 25th year, and they never expected or have ever seen anything like this
No.
happen up there.
No.
They had a 3-hour delay on that, and they finally finished it. They made the players go out there in the rain, and they finished it up. It was kind of a wet finish,
Yeah.
but they got it done.
Well, I think the biggest fear at the time was the lightning, and then
Yeah.
once that got resolved, then it was just
Well,
rain.
it started at Tahoe just as lightning, no rain, and they made everybody come in because something about metal sticks being swung up in the air during a lightning storm is not the way to go. But and then it just kept developing and developing, and
right.
but finally, when the lightning passed over and it was just raining, they went out and finished.
And I think we were expecting this yesterday again to hit, and it hit the Dayton area.
Yeah.
And they got hit pretty hard, but it missed us pretty much altogether. So I think if we get through today and we don't have any more problems this afternoon, then we're done for a while. But there's still a lot of cleanup that everybody has to deal with. So.
Well, an exciting time.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, great time to be a county manager.
And there's a lot of
picking on you.
Well, there's a lot of irritated people out there that think that the county should rush out there and do things, and we just can't. I mean, there's certain things we can do and certain things we can't, but it's hard to explain that to everybody.
Sure. Well, Larry, I sure want to thank you for all the information you've shared today about the commission meeting and the flooding and lightning situation we had. And that's what we do here on the County Manager's Report. And I want to thank Interim County Manager Larry Werner. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and we'll see you next time on the County Manager's Report.